Have you ever been on a road trip where you've gone up to a higher elevation, like up a mountain or something like that, and you hear a bag of chips that you brought pop? I've definitely experienced that. If you haven't, it's really interesting. If that just sounds crazy to you and you've never heard of this, definitely stay tuned. What I'm going to do today is do a time lapse to look at the influence of atmospheric pressure on the air in sealed compartments, like a bag of chips and like this bottle of water right here. So we're starting out here in the lowest point in the US. I'm actually in Death Valley National Park, just down the road from Badwater Basin. And what I'm gonna do is take 3 bags of chips, record them all as I drive up to the highest public road in California, which is about 12,000 feet above where I am right now. And we're gonna see the impacts of these elevation changes on air that's sealed at a lower elevation. So what do we expect is gonna happen? For a bit of a background reminder, air isn't nothing. It's a gas that's made up of matter. And there are different molecules that make up this matter, like nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, argon, methane, water vapor. All those are shooting around. We can create a simplified model of this just by showing proportional density of air at different altitudes in the atmosphere. And what we find is that due to gravity and the weight of these gas molecules, since they do have mass, we find that there's a greater density near Earth's surface, and that density decreases with altitude as we go up. So if we fill a chip bag at sea level, it should have the same density as the air around it, about the same number of molecules in a given volume of air. But something else is happening too. We don't just have these molecules sitting there. All those molecules are constantly in motion. So an important property of gas is that the molecules that make it up are darting around randomly, shooting around in space. They're constantly in motion both inside and outside of this now sealed chip bag. A result of this movement is that a gas will exert pressure. Those moving molecules are running into each other and anything else they come into contact with. So think about if you push a glass on a table with your finger. You're exerting pressure on the glass, and that causes movement. Your finger has mass, and you're giving it energy of movement, so pressure is this force times area that you're applying to that glass. If someone was pushing equally hard from the other direction on that glass, the glass wouldn't move. It would just stay in the same spot. So we can kind of use this to think about what's happening inside a container of a gas with the similar properties of gas happening outside that container. We can look at this model of these molecules running into the walls of the container at right. So we have the red arrows demonstrating pressure being exerted on the walls of the container. There are a number of different measures for pressure, but in studying weather, we usually use millibars. So average sea level pressure, if we're sealing our bag of chips at sea level, it's going to be 1,013 millibars. So that'd be the expected pressure here, and maybe a little greater in Death Valley. In our example of that chip bag, let's say there are collisions from outside in yellow and from inside in green. So these gas molecules are hitting the inside of the chip bag and the outside of the chip bag over a certain time period. But if we have the same density and same temperature over a certain time period, it's expected that there'll be equal numbers of molecules running into the inside and outside of that bag. So in this case, we see that over some imaginary time period, the yellow and green X's are equal. We don't really notice any pressure in either direction, and the bag just looks kind of normal. But what happens if we go up in elevation where we find different density of air and different pressure of air? So if we take that sealed bag of chips up a mountain to 3,300 meters, we'd expect a substantial pressure drop to something maybe like 700 millibars. So this reflects a decrease in density, so the number of molecules surrounding the bag would be lower. In the top right, it would appear that the density in the bag is greater than the density outside the bag. So we have all these molecules flying around during a given time period, and if they're running into the bag from the inside and the outside, over a certain fixed time period, we'll have more running into the inside of the chip bag, which is still those green collisions on the inside. The number that is going to be hitting the walls of the bag from the outside in yellow is going to be smaller. So in this case, we see 7 green collisions, 4 yellow collisions. So there's basically more pressure, more force over a certain area being applied inside this bag than outside the bag inward. So the overall result is going to be an expanded chip bag. There's more force being applied outward than inward. So this is shown by these different colored arrows. On the left, the arrows pushing outward from the bag equal the arrows pushing inward from the bag. You just get kind of like a normal chip bag like you're used to. But if we go up in elevation, We have the same green arrows pushing outwards, just like they were earlier, but there's less counteracting that force. So it's again, if you're like pushing that glass across the table, all of a sudden the person pushing against you on the other side of that glass, they're pushing a lot less hard than you're pushing. Same thing's happening with the chip bag. There's more outward push than inward push, and the bag expands. Eventually it's going to overcome the strength of that bag and pop or explode at some point. So I just checked with my portable handheld weather meter. It's about 1,016 millibars of pressure right here. We're going to measure it when we get to the top of the mountain too, near White Mountain, and see what the change in air pressure is and what effect that has on air that was sealed away at lower elevations. If we look at the bags up close, we can actually see that they're fairly deflated already. So these chips would have come from somewhere near sea level, I imagine near LA or somewhere like that. There's already higher air pressure around us that's pushing in on this bag, causing it to be a little more deflated than you'd expect. Same thing with the ruffles. So this ruffles bag, very deflated already. What about the Kettle brand chips? Weirdly, these seem kind of inflated already. So maybe they were a lot more inflated to begin with, but we'll see how that changes as we go up, again, about 12,000 something feet. I'm thinking that these might be the first to pop because they're already on the way there. So this time lapse is starting right from the lowest point in the continental US at Badwater Basin, and at this point I'm just driving through Death Valley, and we can see minor fluctuations in the bag, probably due to a little bit of temperature changes, which also affects pressure. But around here we start really going uphill, surpassing 500 meters, then 1,000 meters, until we get to the first pass. So I'm at a pass here just under 5,000 feet. This is the first pass upon leaving Death Valley. Still got a long way to go. And in the last little bit, I've heard lots of creaking and cracking noises for our different test subjects over here. I don't know what's going on at the Kettle Chips factory, if they like put them in their bags underneath the ocean or something, but this thing's only 5,000 feet and it's ready to explode. I am honestly a little bit worried that it's going to just pop at some time that's kind of dangerous, so hopefully that doesn't happen. The other two, a little bit more inflated, but look still like kind of pretty normal chip bags. After this first pass, the road goes up and down a little bit over a couple more passes, and I cut that out until I started going really uphill again at the base of the White Mountains, leaving from Big Pine. So close up of the current status. We're at maybe 7,000 feet right here. I haven't seen a sign in a while, maybe a little under 7,000. Again, jalapeno, absolutely bursting at the seams. There's that seam right there that I feel like that might explode right in my direction. Taki's starting to explode a little bit. And after that stop, I got on the road again for the final stretch, going up towards White Mountain. The road got really steep and windy here, and you can see the bag responding as you'd expect and getting just bigger and bigger as I go further up the road. Eventually the road got to be dirt, and it sort of leveled off near this top bit here, where I ultimately found a place just below 11,000 feet to look at the final results. So after stopping the car, I took a look at my weather meter and saw that the pressure did indeed decrease to 689.5 millibars. All right, so let's start with looking at these bags of chips. This was a really interesting result. Only one of the bags responded as I'd expected, so I think there's something in the manufacturing process now that I don't really understand. But let's look at those bags of chips. So the first one, again, I don't know what happened here. These ruffles, not too much change, not too much inflation at all. I guess if I hold one side, it's inflated a little bit, but pretty much not inflated. It could be that, again, there's something in the manufacturing process that does that, or maybe there's a little hole somewhere that I didn't see when I bought these, and it's just been letting the air out as the atmospheric pressure presses down on it. Takis, a little bit of change, but not super inflated either. For this change of like 11,000 or 12,000 feet, less than I'd expect. But there is definitely some expansion there. This bag of chips has expanded a little bit, but not a huge amount. Both of these so far obviously have stayed intact, so I haven't gotten to eat them yet. But let's look at the last one. So this bag of kettle chips, this is the reaction we expect. This is the reaction you usually find when you get a bag of chips that's taken from a low elevation to a higher elevation. It's been fairly overinflated since 4,000 or 5,000 feet, but now it's absolutely bursting at the seams. So yeah, if I just press in, it's pressing back. That air wants to get out of there. It's hitting the sides of this packaging, and the pressure is just really great inside there. But it still hasn't exploded. So we have the seams intact. I think when I try to open it, it'll partially explode on me. So we'll see. This is one of my favorite types, so I'm glad that this is the one we're getting to open first. So let's see if we can hear any of that pressurization. Not really. We can hear this a little more clearly with a water bottle that I brought along for the same purpose. So did you hear that? That air just shot outwards. It's been pressurized for so long that it wants to equalize that pressure. It was a really fun experiment to try on your own, but always remember to pick a chip you like, not the one that looks most likely to explode, because I'm enjoying these right now.